Ridge line, I've heard about. If you want to put a road in across from where I live to bring on more traffic. Or the sewer
All right,
is
Chair,
bringing
it is
traffic.
11 o'clock and we are recording.
Okay. I call to order this Corcoran Planning Commission meeting for December 1st, 2022. I'll take roll call at this time. Commissioner Brummett,
Here?
Commissioner Horn.
Here.
Commissioner Schulak here, and Commissioner Vandeninde.
Here.
All right. For those who would like to join in, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looking at last month's, at this month's agenda, are there any changes that you'd like to make, Commissioners? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? All right. Now we're going to open the floor to anyone who would like to speak to open forum, but it's limited to the topics that are not already covered on the agenda for tonight. So anyone would like to be first? Or everybody is here for the agenda? Yes.
Yeah, so
Okay.
if anyone in the crowd has something they wanted to approach the commissioner about, as he said, about something that's not on the agenda, you can just go ahead and go to the podium. I don't have any cards for that. And then members of the public online, if you would like to speak at the open forum, please raise your hand. That should be available under the reactions tab, or, well, it looks like you're all on computer, so it'd be under your reactions menu. And Mr. Chair, no one online is raising their hand.
Okay.
May I just say one thing? I just wanted to acknowledge that Joe and Mary, who have run Rolling Hills Ranch off of Rolling Hills Road in Corcoran, are both retiring. And so for the past number of years, they have provided wonderful local fresh produce to neighbors on a cart at the end of their driveway. They've also had a pay what you can program. They've also offered their local produce in the Medina Ballroom parking lot. And I just want to acknowledge and honor their service and their work in our city and wish them well in their retirement.
Great. Thank you. Is that it for open forum then?
Yep,
Okay.
you can go ahead and proceed. We don't need to close it.
Okay. The minutes for the November 3rd meeting, are there any comments or changes concerning the minutes from last month?
We just need a motion in a second.
All right. Do we have?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right.
And I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Okay. New business. Item 6 is the public hearing for the Pioneer Trail Industrial Rezoning.
All right. So we'll start with the staff report.
Mr. Chair, this is a rezoning from industrial to planned unit development, a preliminary planned unit development plan, and a preliminary plat for a project called Pioneer Trail Industrial Park. This is the property on the screen. Oops, I use it a different way. I forget this all the time, then I have to use my pointer. This is Pioneer Trail and Highway 55. Rolling Hills Road is off the screen. This property, about 56 acres, was previously approved for an industrial park in 2005. That park was approved but did not proceed. This project is the subject of an EAW that was completed earlier this year. The council approved the finding of no need for EIS at their May meeting. that EAW is available for anyone who's interested on the city's website, and there's a lot of information in there about traffic feasibility studies. I have gotten some questions about that, so I want to note that a lot of the detailed information has already been addressed, and I'm not going to be focusing on that during my presentation tonight, but that information is available online or at City Hall. So in terms of its location in the city, it is in the southwest portion of the city. It's this light purple area, again, Pioneer Trail and Highway 55 on the southern border of the city. It is guided and zoned light industrial. The proposal is to rezone it from light industrial to planned unit development. And a planned unit development is, for the audience, I know the commissioners know this, but I'll just briefly, a planned unit development is a unique zoning district created to provide some flexibility to a developer or an applicant in exchange for some PUD benefits, higher standards of approval, or excuse me, higher standards in the development or additional benefits of some sort. And that is outlined in the staff report, those standards for the rezoning. I'm not going to go through each of those. But there are a number of PUD flexibilities that are requested that I'll touch on during the staff report and then summarize at the end. So this is the project, and again, Pioneer Trail. This is Kimberly Lane that exists on the west side, of Pioneer as right-of-way, not as an improved road. There's a driveway in there. And then Highway 55. This is the Medina Electric Building, and then for the commissioners, this is the Garages 2 project. This is that westernmost building, so for a sense of context of the project. So the preliminary proposal has has 5 lots, and 2 of them are committed and ready to go. So starting on the east side, there's a self-storage building here that is proposed to be developed by Park Place Storage, the same group that has the condominium self-storage buildings on County Road 19. A different appearance, and we'll talk a little bit about the building's appearance. And then this is a Pella manufacturing distribution center, a warehouse distribution center, not manufacturing. And then a future site for an industrial, a future industrial site, and potentially a gas station. I would note that this concept of a gas station was one of the things that was approved in the 2005 approval and was studied as part of the traffic analysis that was completed as part of the feasibility study in EAW earlier this year. This is just a colored rendering of the concept, which gives a little bit more scale, shows the surrounding properties. There is residential property off of Wagon Wheel in this location, both sides. Again, Medina Electric, the Corcoran Garages 2 project, and then large lot residential wrapping around the north side of the project. Highway 55 here, and the city of Medina to the south. The preliminary PUD plan has lots ranging from just over 4 to just under 17 acres in size. As I mentioned, there are 3 lots that don't have users at this time, but they are showing concepts that show it could be developed in compliance with the ordinance, with some exceptions that we'll talk about. The PUD flexibility from the I-1 standards are required for the gas station use. And so it's not, you can't do a use variance, but as part of a PUD, you can incorporate uses that may not otherwise be allowed in the district. And that is what they're requesting, PUD flexibility in this case, to allow that gas station as a potential user. Again, they don't have a user at this time. It's not part of phase 1. So when that's ready, they'll come back for a final PUD and final plat for those different phases. But tonight we are setting the table for that to come back. So the PUD flexibility is requested for a number of things. The development in advance of city sewer and water being available. So this development will plan for that future extension, but will provide well and septic to serve the individual buildings. And that's something that you saw in the staff report that warrants some discussion tonight, I think. There is a reduced parking setback from Highway 55. Highway 55 requires a 100-foot setback from the right-of-way for both parking lots and buildings. You can reduce that parking setback through additional landscaping, and the developer is asking not to do that, but to get a variance so that they don't have to add the additional landscaping along Highway 55. They're asking for an 18-foot parking setback from Kimberly Lane, which is the new public street running through the site for lots 1, 2, and 3, Block 1, that's the lots on the south. And a 36-foot parking setback for the lots from Kimberly Lane for the lots on the north. Those parking setbacks would typically be in the industrial district 50 feet. Some of you remember we had a long discussion about that not so long ago. Additional PUD flexibility is requested for the wall signage for the lots on the south side of Kimberly Lane along Highway 55. Our code allows wall signage on one wall where the main entrance is. It allows 10% of that wall area to be signage. They're not requesting more sign area, but they're asking that that 10% be split between the Kimberly Lane elevation and the Highway 55 elevation. The industrial buildings on the north side, they're requesting insulated metal panels as the primary building material. That was reviewed by the council as part of the concept plan, and the council did support that. It's not a agricultural type of a metal. It is a finished material that our code doesn't allow, but is something we're seeing more in industrial applications. And the council did support that at the concept level. This is a big site, and they're asking that the landscaping that's required on the individual lots be applied instead across the whole site. What that does is it actually allows them to concentrate some of the landscaping on the northwest near the homes on Wagon Wheel Trail. But some of the individual lots then will have less landscaping that would typically be required. They did ask for a reduction in the number of landscape shrubs for lots 1 and 2, Block 2, again on the north side, citing some challenges with fitting them on site. We're going to debate that a little bit later. I'm going to raise that when we talk about landscaping. They did ask that impervious surface area like the landscaping be calculated on a project-wide basis. Continuing to apply with the I-1 standard, but allowing some lots to exceed it so that it can be offset by green space elsewhere. Thanks, Natalie. I was going to get there eventually. Creation of Outlot A without frontage. Outlot A is a future city well site. We're comfortable with that being created without frontage. We typically require a variance, but it would be a PUD flexibility here. And in exchange, the main flexibility, the applicant indicated a number of things in their staff report. What staff believes the flexibility are the 3 things listed there: the dedication of Outlot A to the city for a future well site, preservation of existing trees along the south side of the Wagon Wheel properties, and creating a commercial industrial tax space in advance of city services being available to service the project. So with that foundation, the PUD flexibility to allow the metal panels in the lower right here, this is the concept for the mini storage. They would have to come back with the PUD final plan to council and get the final details fleshed out. But with a mix of colors, those materials could be approved as part of the PUD flexibility, and staff is comfortable with those for those metal buildings. They would ask for the flexibility to allow that on Lot 1 north of Kimberly as well, where we don't have a proposal right now. That's the future site. And again, if the council believes the material and Planning Commission believes the material is acceptable, that seems reasonable to allow it next door as well. It's important to note that the mini storage buildings are oriented so the overhead doors are interior to the site, so none of those overhead doors face any of the public streets or surrounding residential properties. The Pella building has precast concrete panels to add some interest to the facade. They have added clear story windows, second story windows. You can see on the second story, this is the east elevation. east elevation, I think it is, and this is the north elevation. So near the office component, there's a lot of glass. They do break up the building nicely. You can see there's some articulation on the roof line. It's not a lot, but where there's a color change, there's a little higher roof line in this location. The clear story windows and the change in color help break up the mass of that building, but the Planning Commission sure could talk about that as part of the PUD flexibility. Does this meet the intent? It meets the I-1 standards, but it's something that it is a large building. You could certainly talk more about that. But again, I think they've done a nice job on the double-story glass in the office portion of the site. Ground-mounted equipment, rooftop equipment, all exterior trash enclosures need to be screened. We're missing some of that detail with a project this size. That's not unusual, but we've included conditions to address that. Infrastructure is really a key issue with this project. Again, we did an EAW, an environmental assessment worksheet, earlier this year, which included an infrastructure feasibility study. That study outlined all of the required improvements in a lot of detail. And again, I'm not going to repeat all of that. I'm certainly happy to answer questions, but just at a high level, this project on the screen is right here. And this is the Southwest District Plan that's been in place since at least 2004, so more than 20 years, showing ultimately a connection from Pioneer Trail to Rolling Hills Road to the east, and ultimately out to 19 to the west. This has been a long-term vision for the city and MnDOT. MnDOT's goal is to limit access points onto Highway 55, and this is part of a joint effort as part of the Highway 55 corridor study many years ago, and the city. So this project does not make a connection to Rolling Hills Road, but this project is part of a planned future connection there. So as part of this project, they will build the portion of Kimberly Lane that is within their project. All of their lots will have access to Kimberly Lane only. They will not have access onto Highway 55. Turn lanes are planned on Pioneer Lane, both on Pioneer Lane into the site and on the Pioneer Trail 55 intersection. Again, I mentioned this is an area that's planned to be served by sewer and water. However, in our comprehensive plan, this is a study area. The Met Council, this has been in the MUSA for a long time, but the Met Council doesn't have a way to serve this site, and so they have committed to doing a study to look at how to serve this site with sewer and water. But that is not likely to occur until our next round of comp plan updates, which is, what is that, 6 years away?
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. And so the council did support allowing this to move forward on well and septic with the acknowledgement that we're planning for that sewer and water in the future to be connected. And so there is a small utility corridor on the south side of Kimberly Lane, internet, electric, and future municipal services on the north side of Kimberly Lane in the future. We note in the staff report some concerns about some of the septic sites, particularly on the, and maybe I can show it better on the next page, but they are responsible for protecting those septic sites and make sure that they are viable septic sites. Hennepin County has reviewed the septic sites and given preliminary approval, and they'll just need to be protected during this construction process, because some of them are in areas that are potentially ripe for impact, and we need to protect those sites. Outlot A, as I mentioned, will be deeded to the city for a future well site, not a water tower site, but a well site, and stormwater ponding is provided. So Outlot A is in this northeast corner of the site, and that is a future water tower site that would be accessed off of Kimberly.
Well, sorry.
Give me a second to correct myself
I'm
next
sorry.
time.
I apologize.
Sometimes I misspeak. I apologize. I can usually correct myself. So it is not a water tower site. It is a well site. And the access to that well site is off of Kimberly up to this location. The thing that I want the commission to be aware of, and I think it's manageable, but you need to be aware, the septic sites for the Pella site are here. The septic sites for this lot here are also here. And so this sewer septic connection across the Pella site to these septic sites, we need more information from the applicant about how that's going to happen and how it's going to be protected throughout the construction process, and how these 4 septic sites are going to be protected. We've got landscaping very near those septic sites. I have personally experienced trees destroying my septic system by roots getting in there. So we want to be very careful about the tree species selected, and it is their responsibility to ensure that those don't fail. Most of us who live, most of you, I don't live in Corcoran, but I do have a septic system. You have septic systems, and you know that if it fails, then there is a solution, which is to have a regular pumping program. So it isn't a fatal flaw, but it is something we want to avoid. So we really want to be careful to protect those systems. The landscaping plan, again, is fairly robust. The landscaping plan itself is intended, as I said, to be applied across the site, so more landscaping can be focused over here. The plan does require 624 overstory trees and 1,400 shrubs. They do meet the tree requirement, but they fall short of the shrub requirement, and are asking for flexibility to not comply on the northern lots. The plans, however, do show compliance for this lot, so the staff report is written to provide flexibility on those shrubs, but the Planning Commission may want to discuss that and consider change. You could change the draft resolution should you recommend approval. Again, this does comply, although they're asking for PUD flexibility. We note in the staff report, though, that we would like to see additional landscaping in this area. I think there's some gaps up against these residential properties here that should be filled in. It's a little hard to tell at this scale, I know, but when you look at your detailed plans, I think a little more robust landscaping here against these self-storage buildings is still possible. Additionally, any parking areas with 4 or more stalls do require headlight screening, and that shrubbery is missing. You can see on this that shrubbery is missing from the plans. The applicant's plans do note, they acknowledge that it needs to be there, but at this level felt like it would get lost in the plans. So that is something we'll see with the final PUD, and it will be provided. So you'll note that it's not meeting code here, but they note they'll add those shrubs to comply. The preliminary plat is for 5 lots, as I said, including 1 outlot for Outlot A for the city. This, again, is the list of PUD flexibility. I went through this once. I mentioned that they are asking for a reduced number of shrubs for the lots on the north side of Kimberly, but that lot 2, lot 1 actually shows compliance, so you may want to talk a little bit about that. The applicant is here as well and could probably address that. So I think they're trying to build in as much flexibility as possible, but right now the plans show that they could comply with the concept that they have. If that building were bigger than the building shown on that lot, they may have trouble meeting that shrub requirement, because remember, as the building gets bigger, the tree and shrub count gets higher. There is a lot in the packet. It's a high-level overview. This is a public hearing, and the Planning Commission should take public testimony. And then the Planning Commission has 2 options. If they find that the ordinance standards have been met, you should recommend approval of the 4 resolutions and ordinances. If you find that the ordinance standards have not been met, you should recommend approval of the resolution denying the request. There's a draft in your packet for that. If there's information that's missing that you need, you always have the option to table and request that information as well. And then the applicant is here, and we do have a number of comments. I would note one of the speakers did drop off some information that I know he'll touch on, so we'll include this in the council packet when it moves forward. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions from the commission.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for the planners?
Only question that I had was the PUD benefit of the well site being deeded to the city is something that had come up with other properties that have come before. So I'm looking for what is the target number of potential well sites that the city wants to gain? Anybody know?
I can look in the comp plan. I don't know off the top of my head. I can look in the comp plan.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, but is it like hundreds or is it like
No,
tens,
no,
20s?
I think there's 2 potential sites in the northeast,
Yep.
southeast,
Oh.
and southwest, but I'm not certain, so I'm gonna look in the comp plan.
Okay, that was my only specific question.
Go ahead.
I had a specific question regarding the Lieutenant Burns memo that was in the packet and the need for fire access around the entirety of Building E. I know you did mention the need for landscaping, maybe additional landscaping northeast of the site. When I just noted that comment, that actually could cause some complications for that. So I don't know if that comment has been addressed with the applicant yet or not, or what the outcome of that comment may be.
Yeah, so the applicant has received the staff report with all the conditions, and I know they're probably prepared to talk a little bit about some of that. I think staff's opinion is that that mini storage site needs to be redesigned
Okay.
in order to accommodate that, and that's going to result in a number of changes. That's not unusual, but that is something that we think is likely to have a couple of different ripples.
Okay, and then the other comment or question I had is obviously there's been a lot of studies on this site. It's been around for a long time. There's been a AUAR, an EAW, planning for utilities, planning for access off of 55. So part of the overall plan is to remain consistent with a lot of those past studies. So there's a fair amount of history that's happened in the past 15 to 20 years relative to potential development on this site, correct?
That is correct.
Don't we normally do the,
I think this was just to ask clarifying questions.
on your,
And then we should open up for the public hearing, definitely.
okay.
But if there's anything in her report you want a clarification on.
Okay, should we open it up to the public here? Those who are in person will get the first opportunity to speak.
Yes, I have some cards. So first we have Todd Albers. If you'd like to please approach the podium and please state your name and address for the record again. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name is Todd Albers. I live at 4800 Covey Trail in Medina, Minnesota. If you go back to the project plan, I'd like to just point out my property as it's the relationship to this particular applicant or application.
We'll pull it up. You have to do the.
I know, but I don't want to do it with my.
So I have my concern, and I handed out a packet to each of the commissioners tonight, is the impact to the drainage south to the project onto my property. Talking to our city planner in Medina, he often says that most people don't want drainage. I'm actually looking for the drainage right now. A lot of the slope that comes off the property on the northeast flows into a wetland that I have on my pond, on my property, which is in a wetland bank conservation easement. And my concern is that around a third of the water would be essentially potentially impacted. So the surface area of the watershed for my particular wetland. And so what I'd like to understand is how the applicant is going to address that with this particular project. So for example, my property is this here in Medina. I have roughly about 500 feet of frontage on just south of the Pella building. I also had some concerns about the setback of the of the loading docks. So for Medina, our residential area, you have to have 300 feet setback for any loading area. But I think if I did the measurements correctly, it's around 350 feet from the dock doors to my property line, which would be right here on 55. I think, not sure, but if it's not within, if it's within 300 feet, then I think you have to comply with Medina rules as it's concerning setbacks for light industrial and loading areas. The other concern I have is, as I look this way, my view shed is gonna be impacted. You're gonna put right here, potentially that quick pick or gas station, and that, you know, with the 24 hours and the lights, you know, that's gonna impact what I'm gonna see. I'm assuming the people here too would not be very happy with having a gas station there with the traffic and the lights. The other thing with the Pello building here and the signage on 55, I'm gonna see that sign. And so that's gonna impact, you know, my view shed. And then lastly, just overall noise. I don't know what the hours of operation are, if it's gonna be a, 8 to 5 or 24 hours, but trucks backing in and out of those loading docks, it's gonna get pretty annoying and listen to that beeping. So that's it, commissioners, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hours.
And then next we have Sarah Latola. Just gonna make sure the microphone's on.
Good evening, my name is Sarah Latola. I live on 6230 Rolling Hills Road. This evening I have two questions. The first is what happened to the initial comprehensive plan? They had the frontage road running parallel to Highway 55. And my second question, when developing an area, are you doing what's right for the current and future citizens of Corcoran? On the City of Corcoran's website, there are several values listed. It seems that this proposal is in conflict with at least 3 of these values. And these include community safety, transparency, and responsible decision making. For safety, the proposed road is a safety concern for the residents that have adjoining property to the road, as well as a safety issue having the road intersecting on the hill of Rolling Hills Road. This intersection is too dangerous. Already there are signs indicating hidden driveway on both sides of the hill. And to enter the driveway on top of the hill, you need to be exactly on top of the hill before you can see if there's any oncoming cars coming. The proposal to extend this road to Rolling Hills both needs to be reconsidered. And then transparency. For anyone living on Rolling Hills Road, there has been no communication that indicates that the city has proposed development in this area. This is only by chance I heard of this proposal. And third, responsible decision making. A responsible decision takes into consideration safety, character of the city, as well as what is best for not only the current residents, but future residents as well. The development of this area says on the Corcoran's website, it should address difficult issues now in order to avoid large, more difficult issues in the future. One future item that is of concern is that the current location of the proposed road would come out to Rolling Hills Road. This location affects and is of concern to many residents. Please do the right thing and do not construct a road that affects residential properties and the safety of all vehicles. The frontage road along 55 would be a safer choice and would affect fewer residential areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Latola.
And next we have Len Roaring.
So I moved to Corcoran over 30 years.
I apologize, Len, can you please, for the record, just state your full name and address?
Glenn Waring, 22803 Wagonville Lane. I'm directly behind the Kimberly Lane Road. I moved to Corcoran over 30 years ago for, as you look at the picture here, the rural look and feel of things. And what the proposal that's in front of you is going to truly disrupt a lot of my neighbors here view of that property. Specifically, The gas station is a concern to me. For the reasons the gentleman spoke of earlier, is all the light, all the traffic, 24 hours a day. You're gonna leave poor Deb here with 3 sides of road on her property, which is not look and feel she wants to see. So, at the very least, I would ask that you consider denying that portion of it. Something else, some other facility, maybe a gas station, is a whole different element than the whole rest of the project in my head. Specifically for Wagon Wheel Lane residents, we will have roads on 2 sides of our property. That doesn't happen even in Minneapolis. So you talk about rural, that's not rural. The number 6 in the PUD thing, I was reading through the thing, talked about the reasonable enjoyment of our property. This will impact that. Right now, my grandkids can run in the backyard. I don't have to worry about it. There's going to be a road back there, bringing who knows what, who knows who. It's going to impact my enjoyment of my property. We've already talked about drainage, got some concerns about where all this stuff goes. Lack of the water system and septic is a concern to me. I don't claim to know all the specifics of that stuff, but you put that many people in the septic system, I know my septic system costs a lot of money and there's only a couple of us using it. You multiply that out, I'm concerned. So the biggest thing, assuming the rest of it, I guess at the very least, I would like to make sure that we have enough screening. There's been a lot of talk of trees and things. I want to not be able to see that road. I don't want to see those buildings. By reducing, looking at my window now, I look at the hill where the storage sheds are going to be. To reduce the number of trees that are there, I'm going to see those buildings. That's not my view today. I like my cornfields. I guess one thing they talk about, they're going to save the existing trees on the property. I don't know that there's that many trees that they're saving. A lot of those are on our property, the trees along there. So again, I want to make sure that the trees are well constructed to block into that. And lastly, part of my rural feel is I like it dark. So if you put a lot of lights in the back there and they go 24/7 in that gas station, that impacts the quality of the rural feel that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eric.
Now we have Robert Castan.
Hello, Robert Gaston, it's 22741 Wagon Wheel Lane. I'm going to be the last lot on Wagon Wheel on the low point, right next to the wetland that's going to be sitting there. Council members, thank you for allowing me to voice my concerns over the proposed Pioneer Development Plan. I've spent a lot of time combing through the plans and I've become concerned over several of the submitted plans. I've been a member of Wagon Wheel Lane for 5 years now. When selecting our home, we sought to move out to an area that supplied a quiet area that fit our values, but supplied the quiet life that we wanted. We feel that our living plan is in jeopardy with this plan. Our concern is with the Pella building plans. Although the project is submitted, a road will be built adjacent to our back lot. This road will be a busy street. According to the plans, it will be the only access to the warehouse, and expansion to Rolling Hills will not be built for several years. The access to Rolling Hills should also be tied in. Also looking at the plans, they are proposing 168 parking spots with 1 spot for every 2 employees. This means they are planning to do 2 shifts. That's going to run approximately 8 a.m. until midnight. 386 cars will travel this path, with more than on the horizon as expansion is also part of that plan. As a warehouse, they have 18 truck spots planned in that as well. It is a fairly conservative estimate to plan there being 2 to 3 trucks a daily, considering they'll be doing not only storage, but manufacturing. This means that 36 to 54 semis will be rolling through my backyard at all hours of the day and night. This creates a lot of traffic and noise in the neighborhood that is zoned low-density residential. This clearly is a matter that will have an adverse effect on the enjoyment of the existing neighborhood. Can any of the people on this council or commission want to have a road that busy running through their backyard? And I know on the plans it looks like it's a long distance from my back door to that road. It's 20 yards. This will have an adverse effect on the neighborhood. This is item 6, page 6 on your things for you guys to consider. The developer's plans have no way to combat this noise issue. There is no sound wall. There's insufficient blockage from the road being proposed. How does the city plan on compensating the neighbors on the north side of this road? And why is an industrial zone being put in the middle of a sparse density residential area? It will go from rural living to having an open space occupied all by buildings. Another concern is traffic on the intersection of 55 and Pioneer Trail. This intersection has already had share of fatal accidents. The stoplight would be required and it's nearly impossible to go east in the morning and west at night. The only other route for cars to take the Pioneer Trail to C29. This is a narrow winding road which requires stoplight at that intersection as well. The amount of traffic through these intersections would create a burden on the public streets and back up an already congested 55. So this would create a burden on the public streets, which is page 5, under things to consider. Traffic will not only increase as the other proposed buildings are constructed. As a resident directly affected by the development, we ask that you turn down this rezoning proposal. The location does not make sense and doesn't take into consideration the pre-existing neighborhood that has been there since 1979. We live in an area that is, because it is peaceful and quiet, that it offers. We do not want to live in a warehouse district with a trucking lane running through our backyards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaston.
And then the last card I have is for Jennifer Gaston.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Gaston. I'm also at 22741 Wagon Wheel Lane. And I thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to be able to come and express our concerns with the proposal. I'm going to expand on a few things that my husband Robert talked about. We're probably the newest to the neighborhood. My husband and I worked really, really hard to be able to move to a property like we have now. We previously lived in a very popular and sought out area of the cities, but it was not the area where we wanted to raise our family. We sought out a home in the country so that we could fulfill our goal to raise our family in a way away from the city life and to have land where we could have a quiet rural experience. We feel very lucky to be living on Wagon Wheel Lane, and it has opened up the opportunity to provide a very safe and wonderful environment for us and for our family. Now, the proposed development, we lose all the things that brought us to the neighborhood. Everything we moved away from will literally be in our backyard. As my husband had previously mentioned, the development will bring a large amount of traffic right to our property lines, as well as the adjoining streets. If anyone has ever tried to turn onto Highway 55 from Pioneer Trail, will know the current pain point we already have. Bringing 3 times the amount of traffic to this intersection, as well as the side streets, is going to create a nightmare for traffic. It will dramatically increase the amount of accidents and heavy traffic on all of those roads. The development will also bring a significant amount of people into our area that normally wouldn't be there. This is my major concern. Not only will we go from a non-developed area, we will also bring people into the area that normally wouldn't be there. Between the amount of people with the construction and then the amount of people working in this area, there will be a large influx of strangers coming into this area. With the rise in crime the cities has been seeing lately, there will be more opportunities for this to come into our neighborhood. Our children can no longer play and be on our property without supervision. We can no longer leave our animals unattended on our property. I will no longer feel 100% safe in my home working by myself every day. Our properties in general will not be safe. Currently, we can leave our cars in our driveway unlocked and have no worries. We can leave things out on our driveway and we don't have to worry about locking any of that up. This will change once this development is built. The safety of our neighborhood will be gone. I know there's a lot more concerns that we have with the construction and the buildings and how it will impact our properties. I know we only have a short amount of time to speak on this, otherwise we could elaborate, but will the city be doing anything to make sure that this construction does not have any impact or adverse effects on our property like water runoff? Do we know with having this industrial area so close to our properties, what will that do to our property value? And what will the resaleability of our homes be with all of this in the area? We sincerely hope that you take all of our concerns into consideration. We do know the benefits for the city and the benefits you will see, but we are hoping that you will look at the impacts of your citizens as much, if not more, than the financial benefits the city will see. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gaston.
I have no further cards for in-person comments. However, if someone would like to speak that didn't turn in a card, please feel free to approach the podium. And then members of the public on Zoom, if you would like to participate in the public hearing for the Pioneer Trail Industrial Park, please raise your hand. If you're on a computer or mobile device, this will be a function of the reactions menu at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a phone, you would press *9. And Mr. Chair, no one online is raising their hand at this time.
Okay. Anyone else from the public?
I guess I do speak. My name is Deb Janik. I moved to 6300 Pioneer Trail. I'm the first house when you come off of 55 onto Pioneer Trail on the right side. I moved out here from Plymouth because I wanted to have that experience of having that country, where you can just breathe. And so, what I have learned since I've been there since, almost 5 years now, is that I'm glad I fenced my whole yard in practically, because the traffic is insane coming up Pioneer Trail, heading towards 19. It's always way too fast. It's always way too loud. There are so many cars coming through there, it is insane. And nobody follows the speed limit. I noticed that you finally put down the speed limit to 30 rather than 40. Well, now they go, maybe 40. They don't follow the rules.
That will not count towards your time, so please continue.
Okay. So, quick question for you. My property backs right up to that Kimberly Lane, that right-of-way that's behind my property. Is that where you guys are talking about putting a road in right there? Are you able to speak to that? I'm sorry, I'm not super new,
Yeah, we typically answer
versed in this area.
everyone's questions
Right.
once
You
the
can see it
public
here.
hearing's closed.
Okay,
That's your property there? I think it's, right, that's your property. Must be right
this is
there.
it, yeah.
This is the road.
Okay,
That's what they're saying.
okay. So there's a right-of-way right in here. Where is that then?
So she's suggesting there's some type of right-of-way around here?
Yeah, we would certainly be happy to, do you want to do this now, Mr. Chair, or do you want to wait till the questions and we can come back to it and answer the question?
Okay. Yeah, why don't we wait and get all the information first, and then,
Okay, I just want to know if that is where they're turning, because that is going to be extremely congested through there. And I can honestly say that we've had so many, for us to go to all these lights and such is going to be very impactful to the peace in that area, the quiet in that area, and the actual overall feeling of being home,
Mhm.
So I really would like to ask you guys to very much consider this, that this is a very congested area and it's a small area and you are impacting a lot of people. Thank you.
thank you, Ms. Janik.
And those of you on Zoom, if you're speaking out of turn and saying obscenities, you will be removed from the meeting. And please keep your cameras off as well, otherwise you will be removed from the meeting. Thank you.
If there are no other comments, then we could close the,
Can I make a quick comment?
yes.
My name is Karen S. I live at 6225 Pioneer Trail. I'm directly to the west of the proposed development. I was not considered an effective neighbor, even though this is going to be right on top of where my mailbox is, where I come every day, I get out of my car. I am almost run over on a daily basis by the amount of cars that come flying off of 55 at 60 miles an hour onto Pioneer Trail, using it as a bypass. When you add in a proposed gas station, the amount of safety concern there is tremendous. We have people dumping on our property on a monthly basis. The trash of people just dumping stuff out of their cars. And if you're gonna bring in 300 some cars a day to this development, that's just gonna increase the amount of traffic, safety concerns. Not to mention all the water runoff, the lights, the noise. These things need to be addressed with the people who currently live in this area. We have been here in a rural environment that we tout. We need to keep our homeowners safe and happy first before we go to adding in gas stations and trucks. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Zess. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name's Jim. I didn't sign up anything to speak.
Can you
Just,
provide
heard
your
about
full
this meeting
name?
here. What's that?
Full name and address, sir, thank you.
What do you want?
Your full name and address?
Full name, your name, full name, and your address.
I gave you my name. My name is Jim, the last name is Reeder, R-E-A-D-E-R. Phone number is 763.
No.
Address.
Just-
Address,
Address.
just your address.
6200 Rolling Hills Road, Hamel or Corcoran, both work. 55340. Please put the map back up and I'll show you where I live. While he's doing that, this is a classic case of putting the cart before the horse. The council, the planning commission should set where the roads are gonna go, when the municipal water's coming in, and for God's sakes, when is the sewer coming in? And I don't see much in this document that it carries on with those, or answers any of those questions. So, I guess in a nutshell, I think the best thing the planning commission can do right now is say no to the entire project. And just put it on almost permanent hold until we get the roads in, the sidewalks in, the water in, the sewer in. And if these people that want this project to go forth, they really should spend their efforts on the metropolitan water and sewer people, because they're the ones that actually set the tone for growth for Corcoran and other areas out here. Now, I can tell you that I sat in your seats for a while myself years ago. I moved in here in January 1969. I'm an old guy, real old. And when we moved in, there was snow like up to here. And I remember I had one little shovel and I got a long driveway. And lo and behold, here, over the road, or over the hill, comes the village grader. They didn't have a snowplow. They put a blade on the front of the grader. And I got along pretty good with the guy running the grader. I could see the outline of the bottle in his back pocket. And that was quite a meeting. His name was Offling, and Ofling's owned a little portion, a great big portion of southern Corcoran at that time. But I lived right. Now, is this Rolling Hills Road?
You're not on the map.
Just on the edge, yeah.
Right here.
Nope.
Nope.
Rolling Hills is not on the map.
It's not on the map. Then
That-
I can't show you where I live.
Nope, you can't.
Okay, I'm right next to the storage units
Yep. Oh.
on Rolling Hills Road. So, I get to see any and all the traffic I want to see on Rolling Hills Road. We don't need any more. If you want to make a left turn to go to work on a Thursday morning, stop down there about 7:30, 7:45, and wait, and wait, and wait. Because Highway 55 is plugged, and pretty soon you're gonna have 10, 15 cars on Rolling Hills Road waiting to get onto the highway. It's still a bad intersection. If you look closely in the graphs, you'll still see two small crosses. One of them is in honor of the grandson of one of our neighbors. And the road, 55 is going to improve by making it 3 lanes right there instead of just 2. But I don't know what more we can do. Where is the road that they're talking about that's going to this new development? Does it come off of Rolling Hills Road? I heard that it
No.
did. You're saying no, so you know where it goes.
I'm one of the council members, it's up there, and it comes off of Pioneer Trail and dead ends on the far eastern side of this development.
Okay, then what I heard was wrong.
Let me finish, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Just real quick. As Kendra mentioned, folks, there's been a plan for this since the early 2000s. We talk about being responsible, those kind of things. We've got a concept for roads and those kind of things. That cul-de-sac, Kimberly Lane will dead end. It'll be a cul-de-sac, and at some point in the future, it'll hook to Rolling Hills Road. And that's what all of these volunteers are doing right now, trying to make good decisions. Me as a council member, I'm a resident, and I'm trying to make good decisions along with 4 other people on the council. That would be council members and the mayor. We are absolutely thrilled with the participation and the information you all are giving. These folks recommend to the council, and then we make the final decision on the council. So,
Okay, well,
good input, every one of you.
in closing again, this puts the cart in front of the horse.
Thank you, Mr. Reader. Anyone else?
No one online, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
I second.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All, okay. All right, the staff, if you'd like to respond to
Kick off
some.
some of the questions.
Sure.
So there were a number of comments about drainage and concerns about drainage and runoff. Engineering has had reviewed this as part of the EAW in broad context, along with the DNR and the watershed. As when this development application came in, they did review the development application. The staff report includes their memo with a number of conditions. The applicant's required to comply with city, watershed, and state regulations regarding stormwater runoff. And so I would encourage folks who have a specific question to reach out to the city engineer to speak to him about exactly how it's being handled. But with the conditions in the staff report, the site would be in compliance with those regulations. There was a concern about signage and visibility. The signage would all need to comply with our sign ordinance lighting standards. We do have lighting standards related to how bright the signs can be, but certainly signs facing property likely would be visible. We don't have conditions on hours of operations for wall lights. That is something the council and planning commission could talk about. We have nothing that limits it to hours of the business operation, anything like that, so it could be 24 hours a day, but with the PUD, you'd have some ability to put some limits on that if you wish. Loading docks, the loading docks, as I said in the staff report, do comply with our ordinance requirements. We talked about this a little bit last month. If it's within 300 feet of residential property, it needs to be completely screened by the intervening building. None of these are within 300 feet of residential property, but they even in that case, they do need screening, and so we do think that there is screening that is provided. If the commission feels that more screening is provided, you absolutely can attach additional conditions to that. There was comments about noise. The site does need to comply with MPCA standards for noise. There's no exception for that, so noise standards do have to comply with the state regulations. There was a comment about why isn't the frontage road complying with the comp plan? This frontage road actually is exactly complying with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan has always shown it on the south side of the wagon wheel properties because it needs to be that far away from Highway 55 in order to get a safe distance for stacking and turning. So this is consistent with the comprehensive plan that I said has been in place for more than 20 years. There is a long-term plan to connect it to Rolling Hills Road. There were several comments about it. This project will not make that connection. If the properties to the east develop over time, there are 2 properties between this property and Rolling Hills Road. As they develop, we would look to build those sections of the road. There was a question about, or comment about the gas station. That is a PUD flexibility. That's something certainly the commission should talk about, whether that's appropriate in this location. There are properties on on Wagon Wheel that in fact there were comments about will they have 2 street frontages, and yes, they will. That right of way will abut their rear yards. And that's where that road needs to be to make a safe distance. So I think what we tried to do in 2005 when the other project was approved and we should be focusing on today is making sure that there's as much screening as possible in there to provide that buffer. And so if the screening that's proposed is not enough, there are things that Planning Commission and Council could add, fencing or other things to add more screening. There is limited space in there because that's the future corridor for the sewer and water connection. But there could be some landscaping in the interim, at least, that if we acknowledge that it might be removed in the future, that it will be removed in the future when sewer and water come back. I think somebody commented that the tree preservation plan may be reflecting trees on their property, not this property. So we'll take another look at that before council and make sure. There does appear to be a little bit of inconsistency between the plan sheets about what trees are being preserved and where they are. A lot of comments about traffic, and yes, this will have more traffic than the vacant property, but the traffic engineer has reviewed it, and I would say that this was part of the traffic study, but just for the audience, the commission is aware of this. So on Highway 55 and Pioneer Trail, in the short term, they're going to need to widen the southbound approach to provide a dedicated left turn lane and a through right turn lane, and install traffic control. And there are also Pioneer access, the access off of Pioneer into the project. They'll need to construct a westbound approach with a dedicated right and left turn lane in the project and a northbound turn lane on Pioneer Trail. And then, as always, MnDOT's going to have the final say on what triggers a traffic signal. And so at this point, when we did the EAW, this didn't meet the warrants for a traffic signal at Pioneer and 55. And so that's something that is required in the MnDOT requirements is to do I think it's called an ICE study, to see if a signal is warranted. But at this point, a traffic signal may not be warranted. So we'll finalize that with the engineer. We did have in the study, though, that if a signal is required, they are responsible for installing the traffic signal control. But the traffic is consistent with those improvements, is within the acceptable range as per engineering standards, according to their analysis. I think certainly if there are issues about trash or speeding, public safety can certainly be contacted about the speeding. And I think, unless you had something else, I think those were the questions. Yeah. Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. May I ask for a 5-minute break before we begin with the commission discussions and recommendations?
Sure.
Thank you.
No, no worries.
Just so that everyone knows, I'm not stopping the recording, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How did you type that fast? Amazing.
Recording stopped.
Oh, you did stop it.
That's the Zoom one, so
Oh.
there's this one that I'm not stopping, that one's a pain.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I know.
but that's, eventually I just had to remove all of them because they were trying to, one of them was some obscenities. I don't want to repeat it, but they said the P word in Spanish, and I know what that means.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I heard some.
I do know some
I
Spanish.
love it, man.
And then,
I have attended a number of
yeah, then one of
your
them had,
meetings
like,
and
weird
stuff.
symbols, like they turned their camera on, they put on weird symbols. I wasn't sure.
You did fine. In the past,
So I removed him, and then
what you said wasn't said. The council or
another person that was speaking. Oh, he changed his name to something that I also think was a swear word in Spanish. So I removed him because I said, obscenities,
I love it.
I gave him warning, and then the one with
Much is
drawing.
down.
I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to
Much is
like.
your weapon. Reduce.
And there was another name that popped up that had like a
Great.
That one, that wasn't you.
Yeah.
Well, you could argue that it's logical. Yes, sir.
and he
How come this is the first time I'm hearing about this?
Well, so a lot of the information is available on the city's website in their maps.
Who looks at the city's website?
I do. I do.
Nobody.
And so anything ahead of time, the public notices would have been posted when this was originally, so like when it was originally rezoned from probably agricultural to light industrial, they would have held a public hearing just like they did tonight, but that would have happened in 2005.
It was light industrial in 1969.
It wasn't it's been, I thought it was rezoned to light industrial in the early 2000s.
I had it converted to residential to protect my butt back in
Where you are.
1969.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's following when all of those decisions would have been made. That's when they post the public notice or public hearing. So it's been owned for a long time. But the first proposal for development it was approved by the council in the early 2000s, but it just never made it all the way through. So then all of their approvals had expired.
I wonder if I have it.
So I'm not sure back then, how they would have posted.
So nobody got anything in the mail.
The only ones who would have received any kind of actual notification would have been the immediate neighbors. After that, the city puts up a blue, it's like a big blue sign. So they post it on the website, they post it out here. There's a public notice posted on the front. And then they put up a big blue sign that says it's proposed for
Blue
development.
sign by the Eagles nest at 50 bucks.
Yes, yeah, I know, well, and I look for those eagles all the time, and I did not see them come back last spring.
You didn't?
No, did they come back? Okay,
Matter of fact, a week ago,
okay,
two of them were sitting on the nest, and then lately, one of them was blue peas
But I guess my
top of
jeans.
the hill. It's the Walter G. Anderson
Yep,
property.
yep.
Yeah, and there's been one
Yeah.
hanging around out there.
well, do you know Joe and Mary of Rolling Hills Ranch?
Okay.
Just down the road from? No? Okay,
Recording in progress.
yeah.
Okay, at this point, we'd like to hear from the developer of this project.
Good evening. I'm Joe Raddick with Contour Development. I'm representing the landowners and the development group here for the project tonight. We're excited to be here. It's been a long time coming. We've been in front of the Planning Commission and City Council numerous times over the last 2 years with this project, and we finally have some users that are looking to locate in the city of Corcoran, one of which is Pella Windows. You guys probably all know them. We're pretty excited to have them. The other group is Park Place Storage. They're a longtime resident of the city of Corcoran and looking to expand on this piece of property. So we're happy to be in front of you tonight, here to answer questions. There's been some comments. Kendra did a good job answering the questions, presenting the project. If there's specific questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'll jump.
Go ahead.
Jump in. Yeah, I did have a question. I guess that would be for you. So on page 8 here, it had talked about the some of the setbacks and stuff and the landscaping. So your kind of the staff report talked about the applicant is choosing to apply for PUD flexibility rather than add the additional landscaping. This is towards 55. I was curious, is there a reason for that?
Well, there's a couple reasons. Primarily, one of the major assets of the site is visibility to Highway 55. So if we burn that off and put up all the trees and hide our buildings, that devalues the property, right? People want to locate here because it has frontage on Highway 55. So we're providing landscaping, and frankly, the landscape requirements are pretty high for this type of zoning, like industrial zoning we've developed elsewhere, have nowhere near the requirements that the city of Corcoran does. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, I'm just providing context. But we want our buildings to be visible to Highway 55. It's a huge asset. It's free advertisement, signage. I mean, that's why people want to locate here, so that's the main reason.
Kind of tying to that, and maybe this is for us, the parking setback of 18 feet on the one, and we've talked about this, I think, with some other ones that were downtown Corcoran here. What's the impact of, and maybe this could go both, if there's a reason, but also what's the impact to us by allowing that?
Could you put up the concept, Kendra? So as she's putting that up, I'll just talk briefly about that. So as Kendra's indicated, we are required to provide a public street through the property from east to west, and it kind of bifurcates the property into two sections. We have the south section fronting on Highway 55, and then the north section. Industrial buildings, it's hard to make them viable when they're 100 feet deep. There's kind of a minimum dimension that makes them feasible for the marketplace. We've set our buildings at 180 feet deep, which allows the 120-foot truck court. It allows a two-sided parking court on the front side of the building. And then we've kind of snaked the road through there to where it needs to go to kind of meet those minimum requirements. If we were to meet the setbacks, we would lose 30 feet on the south side and then another 32 feet on the north side. That makes those buildings 100 feet deep. It's not a viable option. Kendra, I know this project was approved in 2005 under a PUD, and I don't know if we've shared that site plan or if that would be worthwhile, but I feel like what we're proposing here is less impactful than what the previous project that was approved.
Oh.
And I feel like what we're putting forth is better for everybody. It provides a lot more green space. It reduces the impacts throughout. But to your question is we can't build buildings that are 100 feet deep.
That's fair.
Nobody's going to buy them. Nobody's going to rent them. Nobody's going to lease them.
So for us as a city, we have the setbacks for a reason. I mean, apart from maybe visually just being more open, which is some of our goals, is there an impact to us not having that kind of
There
access?
certainly is. I mean, it makes the infrastructure more challenging. So we have less space to fit the utilities and the landscaping and those kinds of things in that space. It's possible, and we're working with them to make that
Okay.
happen, but that's where we lose the flexibility about our utility spacing and how that all lays out. So that's the cost to us, but, again, if they can make it work, that's what we're worried about, is making sure we have space preserved for utilities. And, with joint trenching and things, it's easier to do than it used to be. So that's the thing we need to be aware of.
Okay. And then, I mean, this isn't necessarily for you, but just a comment on the gas station. I don't know, I mean, I know for me, I'm a resident here too, and I mean, there's no way I'd want a gas station. If it's not part of the problem for those, I haven't been doing this that long, but I've kind of realized now, like, the stuff that's in our comp plan is sort of law right now, so there's not a lot we can stop per se with this. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, we've kind of hit this before with these, that a PUD is really some flexibility to do a few extra things, but other than that, the road going through, building these types of buildings, all that is, we wouldn't even be talking right now, it would just sort of be happening if they didn't need some of the flexibility in this, otherwise it would all just be happening. So there's not a lot we can actually do about it, because we as a city, or some people have already said, this is the plan. It is in this Met Council area, this MUSA, and they have a lot of other control in that as well. But this gas station, it's not zoned for that. True statement?
Correct.
So that one, we could just say, no, we disagree that we shouldn't allow a gas station, because that to me yes, the trucks is already a problem, but a gas station right here that's really connected to all the residential property is a gas station. That seems like for me, I'm not a big fan. I know, I'm sure this site being on 55 and on a busy corner is appealing, but I'm not seeing a strong reason from our perspective as a city why. And I have a little comment, because I just recently got my property tax thing. I'm seeing so many, this is just me venting as a resident, because I feel like we keep bringing in all of these properties, and somehow it's supposed to benefit me as a resident. I do live on 10 acres. I love the rural, came from Plymouth. Do I actually care if we have a whole bunch of businesses in Corcoran? Not really. I really don't care at all. I mean, frankly, unless my property taxes were like plummeting to the bottom of the earth, and unfortunately, the city taxes just keep going up. So I'm not actually seeing any benefit. I know you're on city council.
Keep going.
You're also a resident.
Keep going.
None of us want to pay more money. I really don't care if there's more people, because that'll just mean more traffic. I can go to Maple Grove and Rogers to get food. So no offense to the builders, because and if I owned the property and I was trying to make some money off of this, I'd be welcoming, a building. But as a resident, I personally totally agree with every single person that spoke. But this is zoned as it is, and so there's not a lot we can do about it at this point, except for the gas station. So that was my vent on that. So that's all I had for questions, I think. Yep. So.
Thank you.
Maybe a follow-up to that, there's a number of concerns raised by residents regarding operations on the site. So this is a 5-lot PUD. Right now, the two givens are a storage unit facility as well as Pella, but that leaves 3 other lots. We talked about the possibility for a convenience station on one of them. Can you guys talk a little bit about just operations and what your expectation is? What happens, these things are built, and then maybe what may happen on the other 3 lots that aren't the storage facility in Pella?
Yeah, so we're expecting the lot adjacent to Pella and then the lot adjacent to the storage facility to be some type of office warehouse. Office warehouses function a lot like a typical office. They're 8 to 5, just like the offices most folks are used to going to. They're not night facilities. They're not doing manufacturing overnight. They're not 3 shifts. They're likely not even 2 shifts. And I know there was a comment earlier about Pella being 2 shifts. I think they're probably on the call or online tonight, and they could probably answer that, but I do not believe they're a multi-shift facility. I think they operate much like any other office, warehouse, 7 to 5 type operation. We don't know what the uses are gonna be on the other sites. We're targeting, similar facilities like Pella. We'd love to see another, user-driven project on that next lot that brings jobs into the city. But it's to be determined. We are talking with a convenience store gas station for that corner lot, and we're actively negotiating with them, so we would really like you to consider that PUD flexibility, because that's a key component of the project. But, we look to you for direction, and we'll live with what we have to live with, I guess.
And Kendra had mentioned the EAW, so when the EAW was done, it considered the traffic generation from those proposed facilities on each of those lots in terms of coming up with some of the mitigation measures that were identified in that EAW, then, correct?
That's correct. So if we were to do nothing else and the gas station, we would be putting in a traffic light. If we do everything else but the gas station, we likely don't have a traffic light. So the gas station is the key. It warrants the traffic signal by itself. Without that, it would depend on the use. We'd have to kind of look at it all in a big picture. The storage facility is a non-issue. It's like having a couple houses back there. There's just minimal traffic. Pella's, average amount of traffic generation, but the gas is really the driver for the traffic signal. We would love to put the traffic signal in and get the gas. And I think that would help everybody access Highway 55, but we understand.
And maybe a question for Natalie and Kendra. So we're considering the approval of a PUD and a plat. So if the PUD were to be approved, and at this time we're not approving a gas station on that site, what happens in the future if they come back and want to develop a gas station on that corner site once the PUD is approved? Can you maybe provide that information for the audience?
So I think the question is, if you approved the PUD but said no gas, no PUD flexibility for the gas station on Lot 1, Block 1, that would be the PUD. But they could come back at a later date and ask for a PUD amendment of a different planning commission and council. And it would go through the same process with a public hearing.
So if we approve the PUD without the stipulation that it did not allow a gas station, the gas station would be allowed on that corner property?
Correct.
And it wouldn't have to come back to the planning commission or city council again to do that?
Correct. It will go back to the city council for the final plat and final PUD site plan approval,
Yep.
but it would be entitled, and it wouldn't need to ask if it could be a gas station.
Okay.
May I have a turn, Chair?
Sure.
Okay. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for showing up and adding their comments. Thank the developer for being here. It is a change when you go from looking at a cornfield to considering something else there. So I understand a lot of the concern or panic that comes with it. I do want to note that I feel like this is a good business. Like, all of the requests for PUD seem reasonable to me in terms of what we're trying to achieve at the site, considering that it is already zoned light residential. So just to clarify that, they're not asking for it to become light industrial. It already is. They're just asking for the flexibility to change some of the standards. I want to just talk about some of the landscaping and what makes sense on this property. I feel like when you guys asked for the PUD flexibility to have the impervious surface be applied to the project as a whole rather than each individual lot, that makes sense to me. You want to concentrate your impervious areas to, if you can create the landscaping in the natural part all along that northeastern part, it makes significantly much more sense than putting it along 55. So to me, I was also going to extend some additional thoughts on landscaping and things that I could consider being an actual benefit to the city that might bolster what you have to offer. Some of them, we're talking specifically about the septic area right now, since there isn't the city water, city sewer. and you'd be relying on septic and the concern about trees, I would be making a proposal to completely say there doesn't need to be any trees alongside that septic area. Instead, if you were to do something that was like a natural prairie and allow those big, tall, natural grasses to grow all along, you don't even have to mow your septic area. Things like that actually create ecological habitats for birds and insects, salamanders, all that sort of stuff, which actually builds into the diversity of keeping our eagles that are on 55 that we all want to stay there. And so I would rather see that than see trees just to say that we hit a tree minimum. That doesn't make sense to me. If we're going to take those landscaping requirements and apply them across this whole project, it does make a lot more sense to do it all along where the residential areas are. I would also say that if we could do away with no turf grasses, like if we just didn't put in, so turf grasses to me are dead zones. There's no nature that naturally grows in a manicured lawn. So for us as a city, even if we could gain a larger percentage of areas that were allowed to grow more naturally instead of being that mowed and maintained green area, to me that would be what I would consider a benefit to the city. And we could get that in exchange for some of the PUD flexibility. I didn't have any specific concerns about the flexibility requested other than the gas station, which I know is something you guys would like, and it's interesting to learn that that would be the driver for a stoplight, so thanks for having that information. It does seem like, obviously, placed along 55 makes sense, but since it's residential to the east, or, to that northeast section, and also to the west of 55, it in and of itself isn't in like a completely surrounded business or commercial area, and so it does seem slightly out of place. So that is an area where I guess I would like to have more weigh-in from my colleagues. Let me just double check and make sure I haven't missed anything that I wanted to bring up. I'm sorry. Oh, and then the only other question that I had specifically for staff was one about the number of well sites that the city, just because it is listed as a benefit. So I'm trying to kind of weigh here what the city is getting at. Understand that we're getting these streets, which for the gentleman who said the cart before the horse, really the way that these projects get paid for is by having the development come into the area. Otherwise, it would be on the city's residents to provide the road. So I understand that the tension of that benefit and yet also the cost. But at any rate, so that was my first question. Is that, is acquiring that a benefit because we don't have them anywhere else? And then I had a second question.
So in terms of that, I did look up the comp plan. We have 4 potential well sites identified in the comp plan, 1 in the Southwest District.
Okay.
And the reason we say that's a benefit is if we don't get it as part of a development, we have to purchase the property for the well site. So it's a benefit for us to acquire a well site in an area that is a search area. This is one of the search areas, 4 search areas. We have one that we have acquired up north of 30 on 116, and then this is would be our second.
This would be the second
site
secured one.
in this in the Southwest. And then we do have a well site in the Ravinia development.
Okay.
As well.
Okay. And then the other question is alluding to the corridors given for the utilities in the future. If we did not have a project like this giving us or granting, like preserving those along Kimberly Lane, how would they be taken in the future? Right? Like, so if we didn't develop the property and all of a sudden MUSA comes out there, how would those access points be or corridors be taken in order to put them in? Does that make sense?
So if we had a sewer connection and a municipal water connection in the Southwest District, the connections get made through development. And so we're preserving that with this. If in the other areas, if the connection was along 19, for example, it would need to come from 19 across those properties. And so if the S's, who are between this property and 19, for example, don't develop, then the sewer stops. And so it only happens with development. The city has not historically pushed sewer, water, or streets through people's properties, and they get extended with development.
Okay, thank you. And, okay, last one, sorry.
Mr. Chair, just real quick, just knowing what I know about our neighboring city, as a comparison, there are 10 wells.
Okay.
In Maple Grove. So it's just FYI.
I appreciate that.
We aren't gonna need a couple hundred. We got 4, and when we grow over the next 60, 70 years, we might need to add a couple more.
Thank you. So where I sit as of right now is I don't have a problem with any of the PUD flexibility requested. I'd like some more discussion on the gas station. But I would like to consider adding in just one of the requests for granting some of that flexibility is perhaps more areas of natural habitat rather than turf grasses.
Thank you.
And I understand, I appreciate all that you're addressing in terms of, because so much of this is conceptual, so just wanted to let you know we appreciate that. But Kendra did talk about how much flexibility do we want to grant in the landscaping in terms of the shrubbery, because it is conceptual on that property to the west on the north side. And so right now, with the conceptual plan, they can address it, but if something else larger comes in there, that would change some of that. So I guess I'd be curious where you guys weigh on it.
Any other? As far as the noise compliance goes, at what point will the noise compliance takes effect when the businesses move in, I would assume? Because then you know how loud the businesses are going to be, or are. But it's a little too late to me to find out if they're in compliance, because if it's semi-trucks or something else that are causing the noise, and the semi-trucks are vital to the building, then I don't know how you can change that at all. It's not like you can put extra mufflers on a semi. The noise is the noise is. So I don't know if you can do a study on noise before the project actually gets built, but it just seems a little late to find out that it's too noisy. As far as the natural habitat, I totally agree with that. I think it's a really good idea. As a police reserve officer, I've taken a squad car out many times to sit on Pioneer Road, Pioneer Trail, and the traffic is awful there. And I believe that a project like this would create unnecessary hardship and increased burden on the residents there. And as a cop, of course, I like donuts. And I can't believe that, there's a potential of putting in a Quick Trip, and I'd be voting it down. Because Quick Trip donuts rank about a 9.7 on my... I just don't think that that's a good idea for, to move into a neighborhood and put a gas station there. So I'm not in favor of this project going forward, but we do have to entertain motions that are shown here, the 4 motions, I believe.
Mr. Chair, if I may, there's a couple of options for the commission. Yes, one of the options is to recommend approval, and with that, there are 3 resolutions and an ordinance. And certainly those, if you were to go that route, you could certainly modify any of the conditions in the draft. The second option is the 5th resolution, or the 5th document is a resolution for denial. That's certainly also an option.
Okay.
But if you were to make a motion, just to...
I'm not sure which one's
Someone
which, though. I'm in alignment with Commissioner Brumman, so the PUD seems good. I'm not in favor of the gas station. I don't know if you want to talk about that more, but I would want to not allow that. So I don't know Which ones?
That's what I was just gonna say, so one of the resolutions is the PUD resolution. And so when you look at that, that's probably a good place for your conversation. And so there's a couple ways to do this, but someone could make a motion
Except for number 9 on that one.
to recommend approval of the PUD. And exactly, you could, under item 8, PUD flexibility is granted for
What pages?
a number of things. This is, I don't know in the PDF, but it's the third
Halfway through.
resolution or ordinance. And the, oh, it is number 9, I'm sorry.
Yeah, number 9.
This is number 9, to allow that use. So you could recommend removal of that. In condition number 14, you could modify that as Commissioner Brumman suggested, or make any other, modifications that you would want to. But those were the two in the PUD approval resolution that you've talked about specifically. The shrub flexibility was one of them, and that was 8.8 in that same resolution.
Okay, so the first thing we would do is entertain a motion to recommend approval or denial, first of all.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think someone could make a motion to recommend approval of the ordinance approving the rezoning and the findings of fact for rezoning. That's two different items, but it's the same task. So you
Okay.
someone could make that motion first, and then you could come and attack the PUD, and then thirdly, the preliminary plat.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve the ordinance rezoning to a planned unit development and the findings of fact? Is that correct? I can do both at the
Yes.
same time? Okay.
I'd make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Nay? Okay, I would like to entertain a motion to recommend approval or denial of the draft resolution approving the preliminary PUD plan. And does this include the gas station?
Yes.
Yep, so this is where we would say that I would make a motion, but I would recommend amending or changing, the landscaping requirement and/or the gas station or tackling. Anything added that we wanted to put would be attached to that resolution, correct?
Yes, you'll just want to clarify that. Your motion, what exactly?
And so I know that this is going to perhaps villainize me, but I do think that there's a place for it, and I think that I will be adequately opposed by those who feel like they need to make that position heard as well. But I will go ahead and make the motion to approve the PUD flexibility with a change simply to the landscaping requirement. But I'd like to be broad in the narrative, and because we have a conceptual plan, I guess I would just like to not require necessarily a specific number of trees or shrubbery or anything, but just that when the time comes that proposal is forward, we get more information, and I guess I'd request an emphasis on some of those more natural habitat areas, tall grasses, especially surrounding the areas that are more open.
And maybe one additional discussion point relative to that. So we heard a lot of feedback and comments from the folks along Wagon Wheel regarding concerns that you're going to have a road behind you and the impacts to your property, and we certainly understand that and understand your concerns. What we've also heard is there's been a lot of studies regarding how development along 55 is going to happen, and the need to have this Kimberly Lane at that location was a decision that has been made long ago, and this development is doing nothing more than continuing to basically implement the plans that were set. But that being said, I know there's some concerns. We've heard some concerns from residents along Wagon Wheel and the proximity of their properties to the road. Maybe that's an opportunity for some additional landscaping. Kendra, you kind of mentioned it, but you stopped short of saying a screening wall or a screening fence in that area. I'm just recognizing we don't have a lot of space in there to do a lot of landscape screening. I'm wondering if maybe, in addition to your comments about screening and landscaping, we also want to specifically address some additional buffers for those folks along Wagon Wheel relative to the location of Kimberly Lane.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If you look at the grading plan, and Joe can correct me if I get the numbers right, but in some places that road is 10 feet above the backyards of those neighbors, and so that's where I hesitated about the fence, because I'm not sure how much it would do, but that is certainly something, it's a tight spot between Kimberly and those homes, so you certainly could require something like that.
And we certainly, I mean, Kimberly is going to go with the location it's proposed in this development. I mean, that's where it needs to go as a result of concerns along 55. So really, all we can do is try to figure out a way to help mitigate that as a part of the development plan.
Right, and so then I guess I hear what you're bringing up, and so the question would be, do you want that type of screening to appear more natural in its existence, or would you like a fence or a wall? And I guess for me personally, I would lean towards the whatever it can do to look natural, right? So to soften that, I understand that the city has its public safety things that mow down right along near the edge of the road, so we can't get a lot of those tall grasses anyway, even though that would at least provide a little bit of screening, a little bit of softening. But that's why I would say let's concentrate some additional landscaping efforts that way.
And the benefit of considering the site as a whole does provide the opportunity to focus those landscaping efforts in the locations that need it the most, which is one of the benefits of the PUD. So as we talked before, that's a great benefit to doing a PUD, where we can actually take those landscaping materials and use them to the best benefit of the site.
Mm-hmm. And I think there are some areas on the west side of Kimberly that the screening could be effective with a fence. So, I mean, that's something that, if you could make that a condition, you could make a condition that says they need to provide detailed screening before the council meeting, and give them a couple weeks to resolve that, provide some cross-section view sheds, so people can see how the screening will look. I think that's maybe missing in this application, is we saw that last month, that really helps to be able to see those cross-sections. So if you made that direction known, then we could work with them before the council meeting and try to get more detail there, if that's.
I would absolutely add that to my motion, if I could add with a friendly. Because I also feel like we don't necessarily need to tell the developer what is the best, because, materials-wise. So I feel like I think that asking them to provide some additional information before the council meeting would be helpful.
So you're okay with the gas station at this point, then?
If the gas station.
Even though it's not allowed in light industrial?
If the gas station is what drives a stoplight at that point, I feel like that's kind of the lesser of two evils. Saying that I want it is not exactly the terminology that I would use, but if without it, there will be no stoplight there, if that is indeed the
Unless it's
driver.
built, unless later, when the new buildings are added, that might elevate it, depending on what those end up being, right?
Sure, that was what I made the motion with. Also, in full recognition that you guys are welcome to add recommendations to my motion that would change it, but move it forward. It was sort of to get the ball rolling.
All right.
I don't know if it works that way, right? Because then you're putting your motion and somebody seconds it. And then
No, because I believe that we've done this in the past, and we add friendlies.
Oh, okay.
Can I just clarify your motion?
Absolutely. If you could clarify it for me, that'd be good.
So I think the motion is to approve with a change to allow flexibility on the landscaping. But I kind of heard a couple things, and that's where I'm a little confused. I think I heard you say not have any minimum tree requirements, but I'm not sure if you meant that or just meant that you're open to modifying the tree requirements if you could get some better native landscape.
That is what I meant. Not that we do away with the minimum tree requirement or shrub requirement on this property, but that as a whole, looking at the plan, I would rather see those benefit the screening rather than,
The septic area.
Yep. And so more that I'd be open to some flexibility, seeing where it was not doing away with the minimums required.
The minimum trees, but not the minimum shrubs, because we're asking for PUD flexibility for the minimum
Yes.
And the shrubs aren't going to do a lot to address our
Right.
concerns about screening and some of the concerns we've heard from the residents tonight.
And a lot of times they're not even native, so.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. And I'm not capable to repeat it, but, but it would be to approve the PUD with an emphasis on more natural habitat. And was there something else?
And that before it comes before the council, the applicant would provide more information with cross-section views of that screening in the potential areas where residents are impacted along Kimberly Lane.
Okay. So we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'd second that.
Okay.
And then is this where I do a friendly? I don't know, really understand, because I'm not going to approve this unless I.
Or you can oppose it.
Yeah, right. So for me, I mean, and because of the gas station, or the, whatever it is.
Mr. Chair, I think a friendly amendment, and I might have to defer to Kendra, but it'd be whether or not she would want to accept it.
Okay.
If she doesn't want to accept it, then you would just vote no, and then you make a
Understood.
different motion that maybe.
Including that and this.
Yes,
Understood.
yeah.
Fair enough. So I guess
Okay.
I'll add a friendly amendment, if possible, to not allow the change of what light industrial would allow. And just they have to stick to what light industrial allows, which does not allow a convenience store.
So, I mean, ultimately, this is to make sure that our opinions and varying opinions are heard.
Understood.
And so even if we split, I think that is going to, so I'm not going to accept the friendly.
Okay,
Okay.
so we'll vote.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so the motion does fail with the tie, so then we'll need to make another affirmative motion.
This one particularly about the gas station?
Yes, so I would recommend piggybacking off of the original language
Yeah.
that she proposed, and then adding in the gas station, and then making a vote from there. Yep.
Sure,
Okay.
yeah, sure.
Do I have a motion as such?
I will make the motion that we'll still have these landscaping discussion we just talked about, and remove the ability for them to build a gas station in light industrial.
All right, do I hear a second on that? Aye. Okay, all in favor of the latest motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, that's good. That'll give this,
Now we have one
the council will
last
see that and know there's a
I-
challenge in all this.
I heard it loud and clear.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I may, real quick, I want to make sure everybody knows this is a recommendation to the council, and the council makes the final decisions, and that would be scheduled coming to the council when?
December
Well,
20th.
we have one more motion, and then when we finish,
Yep.
we'll go on December 22nd.
Okay,
The
so we
22nd.
will,
I wanted to get into.
Yes.
It has happened in the past, and when I was on the planning commission, I would make that correction. We are only, the planning commission is only a recommending body. It's not saying yes or no, and it's not permanent. The final decision is made by the council.
correct.
So thank you for letting me speak.
The final motion is to recommend or approval or denial of the draft resolution approving the preliminary plat. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Is there anything else then on concerning this
Nope, so
project?
that is the planning commission's recommendation to the council. The council will review it on December 22nd.
Okay. Thank you all for your interest and for your input.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck, Vince.
Maybe you. that was fun.
We're going to be back, be meeting in a phone booth again. All right, we have the public hearing on the GMAC, is that how it's pronounced?
I think it's Gamak,
GMAC,
but he is here, so he can correct me if that wasn't right.
all right. The accessory dwelling unit zoning ordinance amendment and the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't know this thing. So the request was submitted by George Gamak. He submitted a zoning ordinance amendment application requesting the city to review several aspects of our established standards for accessory dwelling units, ADUs, otherwise called. So I sent out the staff report, and then the applicant submitted some revisions where he had agreed with some of it and some of the areas where we didn't have agreement. What I'm going to, for a lot of this, it sounds like it's pretty resolved and we're on the same page. So the definition here is what we now agree on, both me and the staff and the applicant. So this just clarifies what an ADU must contain, including bathroom facilities and kitchen facilities, and then also clarifies the various forms an ADU could take, including a detached unit, one that's a part of an accessory structure, or one that's part of an expanded dwelling. One of the questions that we are looking for a specific discussion on tonight is the use type and review process. The applicant's initial proposal and the staff recommendation is to change all ADUs across all districts where they're allowed from an interim use permit to a conditional use permit. The interim use permit has that sunset clause where it's a temporary in nature, and the conditional use permit runs with the land as long as all conditions of approval are met. The applicant submitted a response to the staff report where he suggested allowing ADUs to be approved through an administrative process with the CUP reserved for more extenuating circumstances, such as converting an existing building or allowing a larger sized ADU, particularly in the rural residential district. So that is definitely an option to consider. There are some cities, as outlined in the staff report, that have it allowed by right with certain standards. There's an administrative permit process that we could do. And then there's cities that have a hybrid, where some districts, they have conditional use permits, or maybe in certain situations. So we could discuss whether or not we think that there's certain scenarios where a less intensive process is possible. I do want to keep it as consistent as possible across districts, because I do get a lot of phone calls of people looking to move to the city. And so to try to explain it, if it varies drastically between districts, that can be very difficult. But if we can have something consistent, I do think that that would be doable if there's standards we can agree on in terms of an administrative review. So, go back to that one. So both staff and the applicant recommend completely removing a requirement that we currently have that says an ADU must be located or shall be located in an existing single-family home or above an attached or detached garage that is accessory to a single-family detached home. We saw this with the cease application and actually with another interim use permit application for an ADU a year or so back, where having it be above a garage really does not make sense, especially when you're talking about it as for an aging parent or a child with a handicap or special needs. So we do think that just removing this entirely would allow for less confusion in processing our applications going forward. Size limit. This is where we have the most disagreement at this point with the applicant's proposal. The applicant's initial proposal requested the flat 800 square foot limit be eliminated, and for the size of ADUs to be based on 75% of the gross floor area of the principal dwelling. Next slide. And I took this and ran with it. So I did a lot of research on accessory dwelling units and do believe that they are not meant to be a second single-family home on the lot, and we have identified single-family homes being at least 1,100 square feet elsewhere in our city code. So in speaking with our construction services specialist, who has a much better idea about lumber and materials, we do want a dimension that is probably divisible by 8, considering lumber. And so that's where the 960 square feet came from. I'm also open to 1,000, but I do think it should be less than the 1,100 square feet we require for a single-family home. So currently, the proposal that staff recommending is going with the 960 square feet to keep ADUs limited in size, but at no point should it ever exceed the gross floor area of a principal dwelling unit. So if it is a smaller dwelling unit that was built before we established that minimum standard, and let's say that's 900 square feet, then the ADU should not be exceeding 900 square feet either. So that's where we're proposing it. When we did have, I did talk about in the staff report what some other cities are doing. There are some examples of a 75% limit, but it's usually capped at about 1,000 square feet or so. A lot of cities have a 33% percentage for the principal dwelling unit. So that's other items that we could consider our discussion if we prefer a percentage. I would say that that would take away some rights from what property owners currently have, because 33% of a 1,500 square foot home is pretty small. And right now they would be able to build up to 800 square feet per our current ordinance. Additionally, in evaluating size-based standards, we are recommending that clarifying that when we're evaluating how an accessory dwelling unit fits within size limitations outlined in our accessory structure standards, that only the footprint of the accessory dwelling unit is subject to the accessory structure size limit. So trying to explain that a bit more, we have this big table that talks about the footprint for accessory structures in general, not ADUs, just accessory structures. And so when applying this size limit compared to what you're allowed per your lot, we're talking about the footprint. Now, and so if your lot is allowed 1,000 square feet, then that would be the maximum footprint you could potentially have of all accessory structures, including the ADU, but we're just talking about the footprint. You could have a second level to get additional square footage to the limit that you have on your accessory dwelling unit. Hope that makes sense. Let me know if I need to clarify further. And then the accessory dwelling units, we don't have a size or a height restriction right now, but we think that it's important to clarify that they are subject to the same height restriction for the principal structure as determined by the zoning district, but should not exceed the existing height of the principal structure. We don't want an ADU that's taller than the actual house. Next slide. So again, this is pretty much what we just talked about. So staff is open to a cap of 1,000 square feet, but whatever dimension we do, we probably want to make sure it's divisible by 8. And then the exterior design standards, the applicant's initial request was to remove the requirement that the accessory dwelling unit incorporate a similar architectural style, roof pitch, colors, and materials as the principal building on the lot. Staff thinks that having that standard is the best way to mitigate the potential social impact on existing neighborhoods. The revised request with his letter is requesting to remove at least the roof pitch criteria. In discussing this further with other members of staff, we do think that is reasonable. ADUs are known for next slide. ADUs are known for having this kind of slanted roof at times, and that allows for more lighting, for more window space, a loft area, a storage area. So it is reasonable, and I think it can still be aesthetically pleasing as long as the materials are matching. So we are open to removing the roof pitch requirement, but keeping the rest of it in place. Addressing and access, that is an interesting issue that has been brought to staff's attention with our 2 current ADUs that have been permitted. So the proposed language right now kind of leaves it up in the air as we